Welcome to Keep It Local, a podcast of Local Media Association. My name is Ryan Welton, your host of this podcast, where we talk to journalism movers and shakers, thinkers and doers from across the country. And today, for the second time, I am delighted to be joined by David Arkin of David Arkin Consulting. How are you doing, David?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm really intrigued by our topic today because you turned this into an LMII report, which we have subscribers at Local Media Association who already subscribe to this, but for others, it's available for purchase and it's on the localmedia.org website. We'll be sure to have links there. But this report, and I have had the chance to read it since I was in there editing or just looking it over, I loved it. The opportunity for media companies with Reels. Are we talking about vertical video in general, or is it platform specific? And what exactly is this opportunity?
Yeah, I would say vertical videos where I would focus kind of the most on. And, there's a lot of opportunity to sort of, in a very efficient way, sort of make that work by platform. But by platform is important, but all within vertical. So when we talk vertical, we're talking about Reels within Instagram and Facebook. We're talking about shorts and, kind of YouTube, kind of that kind of like shape of video is really what we're sort of like talking about. And I would just say the opportunity is probably huge on lots of different ends. One end is obviously the audience end. It's huge in terms of how people want to get information and how they're kind of consuming content today. It's just interesting. I was talking to somebody today about this idea that we don't need to like re-engineer every time, every story. Like, we don't need to generating 30 stories a week, maybe not so necessary like for them. Like we have so much great content already, but how people want to consume that content is very different on different platforms. Maybe a better use of time opposed to like going and generating that fifth news story is like take that really high performer already and like didn't we build a great reel for that already? Could we do it in a different way? Is it going out in a newsletter the right way? How do we sort of set it up for AEO and search, effectively? So same idea here with, the reels is that it's just one of the many ways that people want to consume information. And you need to kind of provide that, provide that avenue for them. And I just say on the revenue side, we're seeing lots and lots of opportunity here. I think a lot of it's new to people still, but there's and new to advertisers too, but they know they want it. They know they want to be in it. They just don't know exactly how to go about doing that. So I think on both sides, there's a lot of opportunity.
And when you think about Instagram and Facebook right now, David, tell me if I'm wrong here. I am sensing that Facebook is sort of having a renaissance moment. And I heard Gary Vaynerchuk today say that YouTube Shorts may be his number one play right now. Or are you completely agnostic as in terms of platform, or how do you see all of these different platforms, the advantages to each?
Yeah, I think they do definitely. I mean, they do serve different audiences, and so and the interests I think sort of play differently. I also think it's like what kind of publisher you are could potentially impact. So if you're a TV station, there isn't, in my opinion, a ton of difference between the Facebook reel and the Instagram reel. I think the audience is going to be there for them. I think like when you get into like the city or regional magazine space and some more niche oriented things, you really have to think about what people are actually kind of coming there for. But I'll tell you, I've seen actually happen on Instagram more and more in the last, I'd say, year is more news consumption that is in bulletized approach. Whether that's like a school rating story, or that's basically breaking down, new legislation, it being done on that platform works well, but not in a way where it's like the 24/7 like ticker, kind of running through. So I think it can work, but there's definitely sort of some differences there. And I think YouTube is a whole different, beast in terms of how that sort of works. But I think it actually, we definitely know that it works well by like niche category, but we also know this is a huge news sort of like consumption, platform going forward. And so I think you have to learn a little bit on kind of what makes sense where, but I think they all do play to different things. But I would say the niche thing is probably my biggest take. I think you can kind of do whatever you want to do on Facebook in terms of like just get it all out there. But I do think you can start carving kind of like the right sort of categories and niches out. And I think people who are in niche publishing have a huge opportunity. The stories that I hear about people that put their first TikTok up and they're in some sort of like niche and the explosion they saw, not surprised anymore because it's what's really sort of like feeding that today.
You were talking about the school ratings report, and I think about all of the different ways that you can post to Instagram. It could be a reel, but it could also be a carousel or type of slideshow, right? So, but you're talking about here somebody explaining the different schools in the area and who got the best ratings and just showing them one, two, three, four, five.
Yeah, I mean, some people when they think about video, like they make it harder than it needs to be, you know. And in some cases, it just does need to be one, two, three, and four, five. People want to see it, and length's an important thing on reels. You know, over and over again. You know, I was with somebody the other day, and they wanted to run a 2.5 minute, 3 minute like TV segment on a reel. I'm like, please don't. Please don't. Like, just save yourself the time. But here's what you should do with it and how do I think about it. Go out and like do your TV segment and do all things that go into it, but then do a 45-second stand up that is going to be like much more appropriate for you still explaining. The way I think about this is kind of like, um, let the main channel sort of like do the job that they're to do, which is like tell the whole story, but allow the personalities like in these media companies to come in and actually add the thing that's not going to be in there. Add the natural folk, add the explainer, add the thing that like, they learned during this process or somebody like whispered and told them. Like there's all sorts of ways to like do. I think about all the things that like load up into the reporter notebook that never get out of the notebook, and reels are a great way to sort of like use that notebook to story tell in a very not print notebook, kind of way, but it really works well on this platform.
So I want to ask you about what I would hear a boss of mine say. So what's in it for us? What is the goal exactly here? I think about things in television like Q rating and popularity and likability. You have a chance to connect with talent, but also maybe they tune into an extra newscast a week, or maybe they weren't even a TV watcher. What are some of the goals, both in the print and the TV space, that, like, if you were pitching to work with the newsroom, what would be the carrot for them?
Yeah, I think brand is a big thing. I think it's actually a real thing. I think like in the past, people said, "Oh, well, Instagram's there, so people can learn about me." But like today, like it's like remembering you a little bit, and so the TV one's a great example. We've tried to talk people out of like at the end, with their hit to go watch me at 4 or go watch more about this at 4. Like, please stop that. Like people like that makes no sense to somebody who sees this in their algorithm 24 hours later. Like for when? But you know what? When they've seen you and you offer value to them, the likelihood that they're gonna like think about you or your station when they actually turn on the TV is much, much higher. So I think there is definitely like a brand connection here and a brand memory thing that is kind of like, kind of going on. You shouldn't be on this platform because you think you're going to drive a ton of like page views, to like your website. That's just not what they're, kind of like intended for. I think they're intended for to create loyalty though. And so one of the big things we're all after right now is like, how do we get those newsletter subscribers to stick with us? How do we get more direct traffic? How do we get people to like follow the app? Well, this is another one of those in my opinion. So the more people that we can get to follow us, the more people that like found value in what we're saying in our report and want to go find more about that, kind of reporter and connect. There's some loyalty here that I think you can really sort of build from there. And I just think that like over time that the experience of what people are looking for in terms of a connection, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. And people just don't want to be like spoon fed and thrown and told what to think. They want to build a connection and trust. And so I would put like loyalty and trust in the same, vein that I think that all the things that Google like screams that they want today, and I think building reels ties so well into authority, experience. I'm here, trust, like all the thing, expertise, like all those things that are important. I would say too, it's been very interesting to see what's happened, or I'd say in the last 6 months with the Google results search pages. They are now very much surfacing Instagram posts and Facebook posts and Instagram and TikTok videos. Like that's part of the actual algorithm now. And so it's funny. It's like, can you get traffic off of like getting somebody to go to your LinkedIn bio? Like I think that is like a massive long shot. But what might not be a long shot is did you use keywords in your text? And did you sort of like talk about something that somebody might find interest in? And if you do, you're going to have a high likelihood of maybe getting picked up in Google search. And somebody the other day said, they're asking for like, hey, what's your take on like this actual topic, reels. And so I went, I was like, so I typed my name in, David Arkin and reels. And the second thing that popped up was an Instagram video that I did with somebody talking about, and we just vaguely mentioned this topic. The whole pod wasn't on this. We just talked about it for like 2 minutes. And that was the second thing that basically showed up in that search results. That's powerful, And so thinking about like that would be a big like value prop in addition to the brand and the trust.
Another one could be news sourcing. I will tell you, most of the reporters that I've worked with who are really aggressive and prolific about posting to vertical video platforms, they get a lot of news tips.
Yeah, absolutely. So the more that you do that, the more is going to like come in, and the more that you actually ask about it, ask for it, the more you're going to get. We did a training session a few weeks ago, and one of my favorite videos it was the Reels training session. One of my favorite things we shared was like this reporter who was like in this park in Buffalo, and he's just like talking about 2 or 3 stories that have been like popular readers, and he's like, I want to know like what you want us to cover. I want to know more about like was that useful for you and what you're looking for, and like that sort of engagement as a video standalone could definitely work, but being able to have those connections to the like a great CTA at the end of these videos to know what else should we be asking about this story, or what other story ideas do you have? What do you want? What more do you kind of want from us? Like that sort of like touch point when it's actually coming from a person and not just written at the bottom of a story in some like little italics text, like really does work wonders.
And these platforms that have rich messaging services, it allows them to keep their anonymity as opposed to just, it might be sensitive to them, but they can message it to you. And on Instagram in particular, that's a superpower. Now, let's talk about monetization. Newsrooms are searching for a plethora of ways to heighten sustainability. Is it mostly revenue from the platforms themselves? Is it any better than it used to be? Or is it something that's done in concert with the sales department?
Yeah, I'd say it's both. I'd say that definitely the meta monetization is much better than it used to be. There's very specific things you have to do to sort of get that. You do need to do video, but you got to get things into stories and follow their community. There's like a whole thing you got to, and the setting up is sort of like you do need to be kind of a rocket scientist. It feels like on how to like set these up in the business manager. But we do have a service that we do actually have a rocket scientist on our team who actually has been helping people do this today. So I would say that was definitely a thing, and you need to get engagement and do all those things to kind of get that turned on. The one that I think is like the probably bigger opportunity would be doing a few things around like on direct sales. So branded content, I would say 50 to 60% of the branded content we create today all has a reel that goes with it. In some cases, it's basically a repackaging of what's in that story, like the 3 things to know about this. We use some imagery from that, or maybe get some B-roll from the advertiser's website and sort of use it. Other cases are where like it might be like a top schools like product, like best private schools, and we go out and we get basically a few clips about that private school, and they tell their story a little bit in a reel to kind of pair with like a direct reel listing or kind of like something else. Other cases, we're sort of seeing people doing some answer engine optimization around this is like selling a branded content product. So they're using their expertise to answer any questions that they know their audience has, and they're using like the video product to be able to sort of do that. The one though that I think is kind of interesting is well, I think all those are interesting, but this is kind of a fun one. It's kind of evolving are standalone reels connected to attractions. So like right now with like spring break, like clients of ours are going to like spring break attractions, whether it's like a resort or a water park, an amusement park, and they're basically building like a, hey, 5 things to know if you kind of take your family to Six Flags this summer or this spring break, and they kind of show you 5 different images or 5 different videos that are aligned with that. So it has no other content with it. It's a real specific thing. And so some people ask, well, like, why can't Six Flags just do that themselves? And they could sort of use a paid budget to get it out. But the value that a media company offers is that little like logo button that carries with that video. Even in the paid campaign, your branding kind of carries with it. And if your brand, which I imagine the people listening to this does carry weight in markets, that they're in that kind of camp, that's a huge opportunity to be able to say, yeah, you could do it on your own, but like we're building trust for your business by you carrying your message along with our brand as this kind of goes out in some sort of like paid campaigns. Those are the things that I sort of see, kind of working right now on the monetization side.
And that trust has monetary value. It's got value. But you also noted, and you offer this as a service, AEO. I could see how AEO, well done within the description of these reels and how they're used with stories, could create sort of a snowball effect. Discovery of the branded content that attracts consumers, or excuse me, customers, businesses, organizations that want more branded content. So if you do it right at the outset, it's liable to attract customers pretty naturally.
Yeah, and I mean, what's so interesting is this, is that, if, and I don't know what'll happen, but I don't know what Google's gonna do. What if Google sort of says, you know what, like, we are gonna put even more priority on multimedia in the algorithm. So when you like produce it in YouTube, and my guess is, you can imagine they're gonna put even more priority in YouTube based on who they are. But let's just sort of say they do it for all social media. Well, like, it could become trickier to get traffic for .com articles, so if you have strategies that you can kind of put in place right now, especially ones that are monetizable, that basically achieve that AEO, but achieve it in video and achieve it in an engaging kind of way, you could be ahead of the curve when Google really starts prioritizing like that kind of like content going forward in their algorithm. So it's just, it's a hard game to play, and it's probably not smart to like try to play the game constantly, but like you can sort of see where the trend is moving. And if you can kind of like move with it, you're probably going to get a payout in the end.
Let's talk about practical steps to build a good reel. I mean, anybody can open up their phone, record something, and then post it, but that doesn't mean that it's a reel that's going to work. What goes into constructing a quality reel?
Yeah, I think you have to think about what you're, and look, some reels like just happen, like it's at the fire, or it's a cute thing that you sort of like shot, and those are great moments, but that's not every day. So I think the story planning for this is really critical. So like, there's got to be part of like a newsroom meeting where you talk about what is your story lineup, and somebody says like, yeah, part of a process. I always think of things as like, this, Ryan, like columns, like, do you have a real box? And should we do one for that story? And then what is the format that we should actually use? So newsrooms have to understand, what is the best storytelling approaches for reels, not just the length, but like how you sort of move from slide to slide basically in a reel. It's under helping have that language be very like, comfortable and clear to a newsroom. So in that planning meeting, they can identify those stories. And so I think not just saying that you're gonna, yes, reporter, let's have you go that assignment, go do a reel. But hey, at that assignment, why don't you look for this and look for this? Just like the same way that like an editor would talk about like the questions to answer in a story, that same process has to fold out in a reel. So I think the planning part of this is really sort of like very, very important. Where this doesn't work to me is where like in TV, you go out and you shoot like, everything you're shooting is for the segment. And then you basically try to take the footage that you have for that segment and try to make it work for a reel. Like it can work, but like I think what works more than not is stuff that comes across a lot more like raw and authentic, and not feeling like I had to TV produce something, or not making a newspaper feel like they can't be out there with it because they don't have TV production. You know what I mean? And so I think like, think of it when you think of it from that perspective, where it can, and everything shouldn't be 45 seconds standing up and doing that, but when the whatever footage you might get out there, or whatever asset you might grab, just thinking about that, in terms of what's important to make that real a success is an important thing. There are a bunch of post-production things that are important. I would say understanding the right caption tools to use is actually a very important thing. Understanding music and music rights is an important thing too, as well, when you kind of get into that, and knowing that doing things on platforms still works better than utilizing like a big syndicate to get that one video onto like 7 different channels. So those are all sort of important things to, kind of like consider. But I think the number one thing would be, I mean, look, you can still do a reel if you don't have the best captions in the world figured out, and you still have to do it through Buffer or whatever. But like, you can still make it work. I think just getting going and not like letting all these things be obstacles on the reasons why can't. But the planning part of it, I think, is actually like really, really critical.
And I've found in my time in the business in TV news that quantity leads to quality. You'll have it'll be more serendipity will come your way the more that you post. A couple of examples. There's always a legislative silly season in every state. And I remember at News 9, you work with News 9, Amanda Taylor, anchor, she gets up and she does a talker, 45 seconds, about this bill that probably had no chance, but that everybody was talking about. And 30, 40 million views. Crazy. But the other one during severe weather coverage. And this, I used to tell reporters, if you're somewhere where things are happening, always be rolling somehow, phone, camera, whatever it is. One of our executive producers during severe weather in downtown Oklahoma City happened to be rolling when a guy on a scooter just rolled past at what looked like 100 miles an hour because the wind was blowing him by. That video, 250,000 views, and totally an accident.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know what what's interesting with TV is, and whatever terminology we'd use this for newspapers or others, but pacers are like such a good thing for reels, and because they often are talkers. And what we actually started seeing people doing, in our TV clients are they're taking pacers and then like a anchor or reporter is fronting basically that pacer with like screenshots behind them or some B-roll running from that pacer. Like it's really effective because like it's what people are like that's the most shareable sort of stuff. And so news organizations have something like that. And it's just interesting. Like I've worked with a lot of like TV stations and we continue to hear people say things like, I don't like, especially on the anchor front, I don't know what it makes sense for me to do as a reel, like from a news perspective. I know I can share photos of my kids and do all those sorts of things, and I can do some like behind the scenes stuff in TV. But like, what's the news? And I think like this pacer thing has been a really interesting finding. As long as it can be local or regional, like national pacers probably don't make a ton of sense for like a local TV station. But for a regional station, this is a really, really good fit.
Yeah, there's gold in them pacers, I always used to say, for sure, and it used to work for web stories too.
It
Those pacers would get more views than the big stories, to the frustration of many. But let's talk about, every newsroom's different, and usually there are a handful of people who are go-getters when it comes to digital. They're all in. Some that are sort of watching carefully, and then others who are like, I'm not sure about this, and I don't have time to do it. David, what is your process for getting a newsroom to sort of adapt to getting into this? Is it through quotas, or is it in identifying people who are into it at first?
I just snap my finger and it happens. It's magic.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Let me come to your newsroom. It's hard. So I would say the thing that's most important is repetition with training is critical, and experimentation is really important. And that people aren't actually they're encouraged and they're not like, when something isn't like so perfect, like it's okay right now. Like eventually like that won't be okay. We have to do it a certain way, but to start like that's okay. So I would say like understanding the process to plan is important. And then I think understanding having the training elements around like the why and how to go about actually like determining the right way to do it. So like we just did a training session, and I think that probably the best part of the training session was we showed 10 different reporters doing 10 different reels in 10 different ways. And no joke, the next 2 days, I saw probably 4 or 5 of those on their site, on their other Instagram page. And they weren't exactly like, and that didn't even matter that they took something from that. They were like, oh, I get that now. And so I just think, as consultants, we're always asked, like, can you show me an example of, who's doing that there? But that actually like really works. And especially when people can kind of put themselves in that shoe. So that I would say that'd be important. I think the metrics that go with this is really important because I'll tell you, I wrote a newsletter about this a few weeks ago. And honestly, the only thing that people actually look at when it comes to reels or anything with social is all they can see like on the platform. And that's likes, shares, and comments. They're not looking at reach or impressions or 3-second video views or anything like that. And so I think helping them understand like these are the metrics that are actually most important to like our brand and you and why. And this is how we judge success on these things. It can be a really, really important, kind of part of that. So I would say like helping understand the why with like your earlier question about like, what does this do? What's in it for me? Like the brand, the old search results thing we sort of like talked about, them understanding that, them understanding like, hey, look, there are people just like you that are actually doing this and like actually having success with this. And when you do this, here is what success actually looks like. And then calling those things out. I think that's like critical. Like people who like let it just sit there for like a month or two and don't call like the good efforts out aren't building the culture to kind of support more, kind of more of this work. And then I would say like lastly, making sure that the user experience of your website is a place that can like um easily display this sort of stuff, and like so people don't feel like it isn't just a social thing, honestly. Like getting that embedded in, in line is really important. Having like a lot of sites have kind of gone to like showcasing reels and these big like reel windows on the homepage of websites. Like those all show to like I think to a staff like this is really important. So those are all the things that kind of go into, but it just takes, and honestly, it just takes time.
Training and a little cheerleading and a lot of coaching, but also it takes time. And I wanted to ask you about this because so many people quit before the miracle happens. And it's just, you can't just do this for 6 weeks.
Yep. Yeah, I think the timetable all goes toward I think the audience size that you're kind of like working with and how quickly somebody actually gets it, and so I think those are like really important equations, but like it can take 6 months to a year to really get going, and consistency is like, critical here, and you can't have like blips in like stopping and starting. You can't let like, oh, that special section had to get out, and so I couldn't do any reels for the last 2 weeks. Like that, it has to be treated just as important as getting that newscast out at 5 o'clock. It really does. And so I think those are really important points.
For folks who would like to get more in depth about this, that LMII report called The Opportunity for Media Companies with Reels is available on the localmedia.org website for purchase for most folks. We have a lot of subscribers who have gotten that because they are LMII subscribers. David, anything that I have failed to ask or that you want to add about this? How about where can people reach out to you?
Yep. My website's www.davidarkinconsulting.com. All sorts of blogs and case studies are on there. And my email is david@davidarkinconsulting.com to find me there. So thanks for having me today, Ryan.
You're very welcome. And they should go to LinkedIn, find you, and sign up for that newsletter. I read it every time. It's like instant reading. So many emails come in and I just forget about them. I always read David's.
Oh, thank you.
So for Keep It Local, my name is Ryan. This is David. I'll have all the links in the description. Please leave us feedback, and I'll make sure they get that to the Local Media Association team and to David. Local Media Association offers a variety of advertising opportunities for you to market your product and or service to the vast local media industry. Our membership is comprised of more than 3,000 local media companies of every size and medium. We have a variety of ways to get you in front of key decision makers within the industry. For example, the Keep It Local podcast sponsorship package. Keep It Local is a trusted local media podcast reaching engaged listeners who care about community, business, and local impact. Hosted by me, my name is Ryan Welton, for Local Media Association. Keep It Local is a podcast about smart ideas, sustainable innovation, and the people doing the real work to keep local journalism thriving. Whether you're a publisher, an editor, ad director, or a community advocate, this show is for you. And on the Local Media website, we have a number of different packages that will fit your needs. I'll put a link in the description below, and I thank you for listening and watching Keep It Local.